Hello and welcome, folks. Episode of Steel Rails Podcast. We're coming to you tonight. So it's going to be myself, Bailey, and a special guest, Don Breaker. As Empire Builder, Bailey gets Don Breaker all set up. We'll go ahead and bring him on. There he is. How you doing?
Hey.
So, quite a busy day today, huh?
Right. Pretty much.
So what did we do? We washed the engine bay of General Ben.
And yeah,
And did we get to 105 or no?
we did not.
And
Oh,
then,
well.
right. And then what did we do? I was safety guy for 3 guys going into the pit to take measurements.
Yep.
Because I guess they're going to turn that into storage.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know, in our maintenance bay, it's typical to have pits underneath trains so you can get to the underside. But we have a drop pit, and what that is that's a 20-foot pit where they used to be able to drop the trucks from the locomotives in, and they could service the trucks.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer used, and it's just a big hole in the floor, and I guess now they want to use it for storage. So we had 3 guys go in today to take measurements, and I stood topside just in case we needed to get them out in a hurry. Did that, and then why don't you tell them what we did with the Hiawatha cars?
We had three. We had 3 guys who went on the Hiawatha cars and grinded away at the old paint to try to redo the entire paint scheme of a Hiawatha passenger car.
And I think we were also trying to ascertain if there's any leaking spots too.
Yes.
But yeah, that was that was quite the task.
Yeah.
Took a while to get set up and get up on the lift, but once you're up on the lift, I found it interesting because I just lost myself in the work. So,
Were you able to get all that off of your arms?
oh, definitely. Yeah, you can't see through the background, but I look like a normal human now. I think what I'm going to do for any future grinding is I'm going to get one of those like half welder jackets and just wear those, so that gets dirty and I don't.
Yep.
So, and then I'm going to bring my air tools because that grinder, not only was it slow, but that grinder was getting pretty damn hot. So, but I think we did a good, I'm about 6 foot tall, and I think I got a good, 4-foot patch by 2-foot patch.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look who it is.
What? Don Rails.
Bow chicky ow ow. What are we in a 70s porno now?
Yes.
So we were just going over what we did today, and we were talking about how you and I and another volunteer went up on the man lifts and we're working on ascertaining if there were any leaking spots on the Hiawatha car and getting it ready for paint.
Yeah, a lot of scrubbing it there, and that's going to be quite the job.
So how big of a patch did you get through by the end of the day?
I got through a pretty decent sized patch for the initial. I discovered that there are probably about 3 layers of paint and at least 2 layers of what seems like rust on that thing.
Oh,
If that was painted a rust color, and then making for 4 layers of paint in
right.
the past.
Well, you have to understand that the original group, what they did was is that instead of what you have to do is when you have old paint, you have to needle scale it off first before you can then prime and then paint it. And what they did is they just painted over it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think I was finding, 3 to 4 coats of paint before I got down to bare metal.
mhm.
Yeah, that's going to be a job and a half in there, but it can be done.
Yeah, I'm bringing my air tools next weekend. I'm not fucking around anymore.
I will say that one thing that's going to need to happen is someone's getting up on the top section there.
Yeah,
They're first going under the road because
yeah,
there's a lot of loose just dirt on top of that damn poor thing. And second is to strip a rope between some uh, other hooks there that I saw that I
right,
should move into the upper area of the roundhouse.
right. And what Don's talking about is because we're regulated by the FRA and we're regulated by these other organizations, when we get on top of tall things, we have to have fall protection. We have to get tied off. And none of us left the man lifts today because there was no good spot to tie off.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so that's going to be a future project for the roundhouse is getting up and putting some actual rope in there, maybe even having to do some more eye hooks into the upper rafters of the roundhouse.
Right. That'll make it easier to do that job.
Well, not for you anymore, but definitely for me. They're gonna try to get me up there, and they're gonna be like, "No, absolutely not."
Well, shit, you stay on the man lift, I'll take care of it.
There you go. Yeah, they can strap you up on that man to make sure you don't move anywhere.
So we're going to discuss one type of locomotive tonight. Unfortunately, we can't get a hold of Lucas, so we're not going to be talking about the locomotive that he was going to talk about, which was the coal turbine locomotive. But I think what we will do is we can kick it off. And so last week we talked about 4 of our favorite locomotives. And this week we're going to talk about a pivotal locomotive from the 50s. And that is the turbine locomotive.
The big blows.
The big blow, also known as the bird burner. So if Bailey, if you'd like to kick it off, go ahead.
So in 1941, the Union Pacific Railroad had locomotives with the wheel arrangement of 4664 and 4884. These were Union Pacific's most powerful steam locomotives at the time. Dieselization rapidly killed them, and a new locomotive was needed that would be able to pull and haul the same amount of trains that the Big Boy and the Challengers would face. The Union Pacific Railroad had plans for nuclear-powered trains. They had plans for very, very high horsepower diesels, even though they never existed. And then they experimented with jet engines. In enter the gas electric the gas electric turbine locomotive, or GTEL.
So I've got some stats pulled up here, like I did last week, and this is kind of going off. They really didn't pick which run of the GTEL they pulled these specs for. So I'm kind of guessing that they leveled all 3 of the runs out. And it's saying that the power was anywhere from 4,000 to 8,500 horsepower, depending on which run of GTEL they had. There were 3 runs. Fuel was bunker C for for all 3 runs. It was bunker C. And that stuff is sludge, so it's got to go through a fuel heater to get the viscosity in order to get burnt. The top speed, capable of speeds often in the range of 70 to 100 miles an hour. The weight varied between the 3 different runs. Weight was anywhere from 300 tons to 500 tons. The length was anywhere from 75 feet in the earlier runs to over 100 feet in the 3rd run, because in the 3rd run it was an AB unit. Like you can see behind me. So the cab, there was a small diesel engine, and then in the B unit was the turbine. And then behind that was a bunker C tender that they carried. Number of units, you probably know more on how many units, because there were a number of each run that was done.
I don't actually know much about the units. All I know is that this thing was kind of like, so right now, for instance, an idea to help everyone is Union Pacific 4014 uses bunker C oil or just used oil for its fuel. So it burns usually very, very clear.
Right.
The one thing that a lot of people don't know, a lot of people remember about the GTELs, is the fact that if they sat underneath an overpass, the heat from the turbine engine would melt the asphalt.
They did that.
So the road would just basically melt.
Yep. So if you got to wait for orders, don't do it under a bridge.
Exactly.
They were also talking about fuel efficiency and how they were grumpy at low speeds. They were better at high speed, and they had a better fuel efficiency at speed. But the majority of the runs where these GTELs were low speed zones. So
it wouldn't be until you hit areas like the Archer's Line and Sherman Hill where you'd be allowed to go over 35.
And there is a lot of videos of Sherman Hill with GTELs hitting it at full go. But yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of information on the GTELs.
The problem with the GTELs is that it's kind of, they're a little glossed over only because of the fact that they're kind of a flop in design. It's almost the same kind of flop of design as the Southern Pacific Cross Mafes, where you have a locomotive that's trying to be another locomotive, and it's failing miserably because of the technology that you're using is not suitable for what you actually are doing.
Right.
You're using a passenger jet engine inside of a locomotive. Passenger jet engine works great, hauling 50 people, 60 people, but you're using it right now to pull a 2-mile long train at varying speeds.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out very well.
Because, I mean, when a jet engine is at cruising altitude, they're at a set RPM. So, they're meant to work at a set RPM and not necessarily under that, or they're going to be really unhappy.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the colder the air is, the better the efficiency of that jet engine is going to be. And down here on the surface, It ain't even in the coldest of winters. You're not matching the temperatures you're getting at 30,000+ feet.
Right. So your EGT down here is going to be way higher than what it's going to be at altitude.
Well, I mean, the other problem is that most engines just themselves do not work very well in the heat.
Right.
And when you're highballing through Wyoming or highballing through California or Arizona, it's not going to work out for you very well.
I mean, on the drawing board, it was a good idea.
Yes. But
and
also, just like on the drawing board, I'd say about 80% of on the drawing board, it's only a good idea on the drawing board.
Right. Now they did have a nickname, Big Blow, and then they had another nickname that I mentioned, which was the Bird Burner, which I'm pretty sure that thing has fought it out its fair number of birds going down the rail.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And if you guys haven't seen a jet FOD something out, look for it on YouTube. It's quite scary.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what happens is the bird gets too close to the intake and gets sucked through the turbine, and usually that causes irreparable damage to the turbine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean that's, and I don't. So, can you talk a little bit to the green coating on the foredeck on the front of the windshield there?
The green coating was designed so that if you were going on the rails in the face of the sun rays would be absorbed by the green so that you wouldn't get flash banged in the face with sun rays.
Right.
There's a way to help so that the rays wouldn't blind you through the actual glass.
Don't we have something like that on 325?
Yes, 325 has something like that, except I think it's black, if I remember correctly.
Right. Yep. So, yeah, so that's the gas turbine gas turbine that I want to go through. It's like we said, short and sweet tonight. So why don't we talk about another thing? Why don't we talk about what was done with 325 today?
Yes.
So we had two mechanics working on that, and I think what they were doing is they were checking fluid levels and topping fluid levels off.
Yep.
I got good video of her starting up, so that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the plan with 325?
We are testing her so that she can be sent to Osceola herself.
Okay.
As well as, I think, a Great Northern car. So she would bring the Great Northern car to Osceola.
Okay. And
Yep.
I know that we have a car ready to go, right?
Yep, the 1215.
So, Don, why don't we ask you a couple questions here? So
Go right ahead.
You're from Texas, right?
Yes, I am.
So what do you do? What do you do down in Texas? Do you belong to a heritage museum or?
No, I don't. There actually, I am by trade a flight instructor, and it was Empire Builder here who pulled me in on this whole project. Kind of in the last month or so.
Nice.
Mhm.
So a new convert to rail fanning, which is nice.
Yes, indeed. I have been a rail fan, but on the passive side for most of my life.
Mhm.
And now I actually got to have some actual hands-on experience. Yeah, my first exposure to that was actually via my grandfather, who worked for Union Pacific down in the Houston area.
Okay.
Hmm
That's nice.
And so, yeah, he and I would go train watching there down in the Houston area about once a month or so.
Nice.
And yeah, so that's but after that, didn't have too much direct exposure into the rail fan side of things until just recently here. So I'm happy to get back in.
Well, and I tell you, watching the trains come down the track is one thing. Being able to walk into a maintenance facility and walk up to one of these and go, "Holy shit, this thing is massive," and put your hands on it. A lot of people
Something else
don't get
entirely.
that. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, that is something that I would highly recommend to anyone who is a fan there or just even kind of interested there in it is to find a local historical railroad museum or society group and check them out because they could always use more members. They're more hands on deck.
Right. And Minnesota Transportation Museum basically lives off volunteer help. We had a big showing of volunteers today. I couldn't believe the number of mechanics we had, and that was good because we got a lot done.
Mm-hmm.
There. Yeah, today was a very busy day, very productive. Not only was there actual work being done trying to restore and also maintain these trains there, there was also a bunch of people who came by to get rides there. Even had a graduate there that Empire Builder helped make their day.
Oh, cool. Let's hear about that before we sign off.
So a senior was getting his photos taken at the Jackson Street Roundhouse, and with permission from the superintendent, I had him climb on 325 on her side rail to take pics, as well as sit in the engineer's seat and take pics. And once that was all said and done, I went over to 3110, opened up her engine bay doors, and had him sit next to it as it was running to take pics.
Oh, that's cool.
A unique event that'll probably never happen again unless he becomes a volunteer.
He's gonna trump everybody's senior picture.
Exactly.
So, well, we're just about the half-hour mark, and Bailey, I think you and I had talked about maybe cutting it short tonight.
Yeah.
I know we're all exhausted.
Yeah.
The heat was really bad today.
Mhm.
I know I left early
Yeah,
because
homie,
I have
hom-
heat exhaustion.
homie, you're a cherry right now.
Yeah, it was warm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got home. I took a shower, and holy shit! The amount of black that came off of me in the shower was just, oh my god. Well, I thought it was funny because I come off the man lift. Bailey looks at me and he's like, "Holy fuck!"
Yeah. It literally looked like if you had someone who took who just took, like a jar of oil and just dumped it all over their arms.
Yeah. Well, I I think partially that's because I had the more rusty part.
Oh yeah, you definitely had the more rusty side.
Yeah.
Yeah. My area was very much it's paint on paint on paint on paint on paint.
Right.
Within an extra 2 coatings of rust.
Yes. But by comparison, my rust layer was a lot thinner than Conrail's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was able to get it down to bare steel though, which was good. I didn't really see any type of degradation, so it was probably just surface rust that cleaned up.
There. Yeah, so hopefully that means that there won't be a need for patching in the future.
Right.
and that will help the restoration process go a lot smoother.
Yeah. Well, it's going to take us a while to get all the paint off because
Oh,
we
yeah.
got to do the
Well, I
roof.
mean,
We got to figure out our tie off situation first to get the rest of the roof done.
hmm Yeah, I think overall the tie-off situation can be resolved without too much issue. It's just going to take a little bit of finagling there at the start to get a couple extra eye hooks drilled into the beams up at the top. Then there's enough of them there. I think it's probably going to need an extra one or two before a strong rope can be sent between them, and then you have full coverage over the car.
Right. And that, one or two guys can get on that and do their work safely.
hmm
So, well, that was a shortened, condensed version of Steel Rail's
mhm.
podcast. And I wanted to thank our special guest, Don Rail. Thank you very much for not only coming on the show, but taking your trip up here from Texas to Minnesota and joining us for a day at the museum. The one thing I do have to say is at least you didn't come in the winter.
yeah,
not that bad.
because I got out here and the temperature there, I know it was hot for the locals then there. I got here and was like, okay, this isn't too bad.
Mhm.
It's hot, but it's not too bad there. I'm
Right.
glad I wasn't. I will be honest. I'm glad I wasn't here about a week ago. There, I saw y'all's temperatures there. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
there's not a lot of difference here.
yep. And I guess with our weather, we're kind of going back into that spot. So
hmm So I'm hoping that y'all don't have to deal with today's heat very much longer there, and it drops back into a little bit more normal levels.
yeah, it's and that's when us Minnesotans kind of long for fall. Because
Mhm.
Mhm.
we're tired of these strings of hot weather. But
Yeah.
what can you do
It's-
besides move?
exactly there. I mean, you can't get too much north here, but the further north you go, the crazier the winters get. And I will give you guys got something else going on with the winters here, and more power to you.
That's normal. That's a normal
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
Winters here are they're just normal. That's what they are.
Yeah, if you're gonna live up here, you gotta kind of have a thick skin, and you kind of gotta let it roll off your back. But
Mhm.
like my wife and I went down to Florida in February, and it was in like 65, 75 with no humidity, and we're like,
Mhm.
okay, so why do we live up there?
And there, yeah, that's where you got people who are just coming on down to south there in the wintertime, going, this is wonderful there, and then, no, thank you for the summer, and that is very understandable.
Right. Well, I want to thank both of you guys for coming on tonight. It was a
Mhm.
pleasure working with both of you today, and it was a pleasure talking to both of you. And hopefully, in the future, we can have you back up at the museum there, Don.
That would be
Mhm.
awesome.
So why don't we'll sign off for now, and everybody have a great night.
Yep. You too.
All right, talk to you
Have a
later,
good night,
guys.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.